Hi, I'm Barbara Brohl. I'm the Executive Director for the Department of Revenue, and we've been working on the implementation and rollout for retail marijuana for the past year. And part of what we've been working on is the marijuana inventory tracking system, and we're really excited to be able to launch that with you and give you a presentation and a demonstration on the capabilities of this system. Now, this system is just one of the tools that the Marijuana Enforcement Division will be using to accomplish its mission for ensuring public safety and ensuring that we have a very robust regulatory model. This MIT system will be working in concert with video surveillance, additional audit and compliance checks, as well as very specific enforcement actions. In addition, it will be providing both the industry and the MED with some very easy-to-use tools in the ability to track marijuana products from the beginning, so when it's a little seedling, until it's being sold to a consumer, so from seed to sale. And with MITS, the enforcement staff will be able to take a look at where all of these products are. So this marijuana, regardless of what room it's in, regardless of what facility it's in, we'll be able to track it all the way through its growth cycle and its sales cycle. But the one thing we want to make very clear is that this is a seed-to-sale system, and so anything that happens after sale we will be unable to track. Now, we also recognize that this information, the information provided in this system is very sensitive to the business and to MED, and as a result, we have been working very closely with our vendor, Franwell, to ensure that there's extensive data security around all of the aspects of this system. Now, you're going to see that we do have some very limited patient information here. The only thing we have, and there are two pieces of information that's necessary to ensure that we have the appropriate number of plants in our centers and in our cultivations. It's an MMR number and the plant count. That's it. But the beauty of this system and the cornerstone of this is the RFID tag system, so radio frequency identification tags, and those will be the mechanism by which this product can be tracked all the way through from beginning to end. Now, over the past 4 or 5 weeks, we've been training all of our industry members. The majority of them have already been trained. We still have a few to get in and get trained as well. We're working with them. We're doing some outreach with them as well. So, no further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Jeff Wells, who's the president of Franwell, and he will provide you with a demonstration of MIT's capabilities and the RFID tags.
Thanks, Barb. So I'd like to introduce you to MITs. And in order to understand MITs properly, you need to understand the relationships that went into building MITs. And of course, as Barb has already said, we're the program vendor. We were contracted by the MED, Department of Revenue, to build a marijuana inventory tracking solution. And this solution's primary goal, which we soon learned early on, was a regulatory one. This is a regulatory system and a regulatory reporting system. It's not a system that is built and designed to operate and run a business. So its primary goal is the mission of the MED, and that's to regulate this industry. And when we were building it, and as we are building it, and as we continue to make changes and enhancements and adjustments to the system, all of those requirements flow from the MED. So the approval line, our top line approval process is directly through the MED. So everything we do to MITs to enhance it, to make it better, and ongoing with multiple phases of a rollout, that's all directed by the MED. Now, with that said, there's another element in this whole relationship, and that's the industry. It was clear to us early on that that's very important to the MED. It has become and will continue to be important to us, and this influence is taken very seriously by us, and we've had the opportunity over the last few weeks during training to broker some of those requests back to the MED, and they've been very kind in allowing us to make some of those adjustments that would help with the rollout. So that's just a picture of what's going to come. We take it very seriously, and so does the MED, but it needs to be clear, and everyone needs to understand this relationship for us. The approval process comes through the MED. So now I want to talk about actually MITS, the application, the software platform. It is a web-based platform. It's delivered as a website, and the main URL is co.mymits.com. It's a secured website, and the way that someone is credentialed into that website is via an industry admin. And an industry admin is an actual credential that's given to a trained licensee, once that licensee has their credentials, they can add their employees. And when they add their employees as users, we actually send them an email that has a secured login key. It's a time-sensitive secured login key. Once they get that key, they can log into the system, and once they log into the system for the first time, we present them with their user profile. That's where they can put in their own personal password. They can also put in a security question. And that personal password is a complex password. We force them to put in a complex password. And that same credentialing step is the same for the state users as they add state users. The only exceptions to that is the industry admins are actually added by us or administrative state employees. So the next thing to understand in MITS is a facility-based reporting engine. So everything in MITS is reported by facility. This is a licensed facility. Everything is reported from the setup, when they set up their employees, they set up their strains or items. Everything in the system is set up by facility. And as you notice on the screen here, in the top of the screen is a representation of an industry admin adding facilities. And then once those facilities are added, they're actually anywhere in MITS, any of the home pages, you can actually select from the right-hand corner which facility you're actually working in. So you have to select a facility, then that facility governs what you're reporting, whether it's plants, packages, whether you're creating transfers, whatever you're doing, it's actually assigned to that facility. And then also in MITS we have facility typing. So at the bottom of the screen you notice that there's a little grid there. OPC stands for, it's the cultivation acronym. MIP is the infused manufacturer acronym, and MMC is the retail center, or where the actual patient sale happens. And in MITS we limit, there's 4 or 5 functional areas in MITS, and of these would be plans, packages, transfers, and sales. And as an example of how we limit these functional areas in MITS, for an OPC, they would have this functional area by default of plants. But if you selected a MMC, plants would not be available in MMC. And likewise, to an OPC, sales are not available. So that's just an example of how we implement these sales typing in MITS. Now I want to show, as Barb mentioned in her opening, the actual patient's registry. This is an example of a patient registry in MITS, and as you can see, we're storing the MMR number, the count limits, and again, in MITS, we only use that to notify the MED when a licensee has exceeded their authorized plant count. And the way that we calculate that is we add up these limits based on their patient registry. Next in MITS, during training we train each licensee on this initial setup process, and I wanted to present it to show how simple and easy it is to get set up in MITS and get going as far as the licensee. So as the industry admin would add all their facilities, the next thing that we train a licensee to do is for each one of those facilities, employees need to be added, strains need to be added, and items. And then facility type specific, if you're a cultivation, you would add rooms. If you're a MMC or a retail center that's actually selling the product, you would add your patients. Once that happens, you can order your tags in the system. Once you receive your tags, you can start labeling inventory, and you're up on MITS. And it's as simple as basically learning these 4 ad screens, and you're up and running on MITS. Now let's talk about the tags. There's basically 2 types of tags in MITS. There's the plant tag and there's the package tag. The plant tag is a harsh environmental tag. It's encapsulated with a PVC type of material, and it's designed to survive the cultivation process. The package tag is an adhesive label with an RFID tag embedded in it. What I want to point out is what actually we do with those tags during our provisioning process. It's important to understand what happens to those tags before they're actually able to be used in the industry. The first thing we do is we encode those tags with a license-specific serial number. Then we actually read a security ID off of the chip. It's a read-only, put on by the manufacturer of the chip. We read that ID, we marry these two pieces of information together, and we log that into each facility, whatever facility ordered the tag, each facility's tag inventory to be used and then eventually associated to plants and packages. We also test the tags, make sure that they go out with a high degree of readability and reliability. We also print a lot of human readable information on that. I'll talk about that in a minute. One final point I want to make about tags, and as far as this tag inventory, it's important to understand that part of this provisioning process actually creates these tag IDs in that facility's system, as far as in the database for that facility in MITS. So when they come in, they don't have to do anything, and you'll see in a few minutes in my demonstration, they don't have to do anything but pick the next tag to associate. They don't have to load these tags in, they don't have to scan them in or anything. They're already in the system once we provision them. So what we put on the tag, we put the facility name, we put an application identifier. Application identifier is medical, and in the future case there will be an application identifier for retail. So it'll say retail here, and then also the retail tags will be a different color, distinguishable by the MED investigators. The other thing that we print the tag order date. This helps us with any recall of any batch of tags we need to. We also we encode in a barcode, we encode the plant identification number, and what that is that serial number that I talked about a little earlier. That they need to, if they so choose to use a barcode system, or they want to use a barcode scanner, they can scan this tag in during a movement or a growth report change. Also, this depicts the front and back of the tag. On the back of the tag, we print the MED seal. Next thing, there's actually two parts to the plant tag. There's the tag itself, and then there's this strap. And the way that we deploy the strap is there's two holes on either end of the plant tag. The strap is actually run through both holes initially, and that's how we initially deploy the tag. And the reason we do that is because in MITS, when a plant goes from a immature batch or a cutting or seedling that's being nourished into a veg plant, once it becomes a vegging plant, a vegetative plant, they are required to put an RFID tag with that plant. The plant is not far enough along to sustain the attachment physically of the tag, so we designed the strap rigid enough to be stuck into the grow medium. It holds the tag upright so that we don't have any problem, the inspectors coming in don't have any problem reading the tags. Then when the plant becomes viable enough to sustain a permanent attachment of the tag, they simply take the strap out of one of the holes. They leave it running through one end of the plant tag. They pick a branch to permanently attach that tag to. They attach it, and once that strap is attached, it's permanently attached, and if it's to be removed, it will have to be cut. As far as the package tag, again, we print the application identifier, we print the licensee name, licensee number, and we also print a barcode, and that barcode is the actual package serial number that we've encoded on the tag. This is a visual representation of the domain of MITS. We use this in training, we use this in a lot of times when we need to explain everything about MITS and how MITS works and all the pieces of MITS. as you can see, we have this circle, which is cultivating, and then there's two other main process pieces to MITS, which is selling and infusing. But there's four main functional areas of MITS for reporting. That's plants, packages, transfers, and sales. And in the cultivating area, the cultivating processes, they transition, a plant actually transitions into, after being harvested, it would be packaged. The primary purpose of packages in MITS is for transfer. And the package mechanism, once a product's been transferred, that package ID follows that product all the way through the next facility, the next chain of custody, until it's potentially repackaged or sold. And that's kind of the role of packages, that functional area in MITS. The next main functional area is transfers, and that's depicted by all of these yellow lines in the middle of the diagram here. And transfers, they will set up a transfer, multiple destinations, many packages, and when they register that transfer, it creates a digital manifest. And as you'll see an example of that in a few minutes. That digital manifest then becomes a placement for the manual manifest that they're now using. The next functional area of MITS is the sales area, and that's where they would record the sale of the product out of the package. So basically, this all fits together and results in a very tight, traceable chain of custody, and all four of these functional areas work in concert, as we demonstrated in our diagram here. So the next thing I'd like to do is do a quick demonstration. Let me log in here. When you log into MITS, first thing that a user sees is the terms and conditions that they must accept. Once they accept that, then they're logged in, and the first facility and their drop-down list is shown. They can also, this particular licensee is authorized for 2 other facilities. And I want to point out a couple of things before we dive into the plantings. This is what we call our navigation bar. And this, like I told you in the previous slide, what we have represented here are those functional areas of MITS. For this particular licensee type, which happens to be a cultivation, we have plants, we have packages, we have transfers, and admin is used during setup. Not all users would be given those permissions by their industry admin, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we would create a plant, and we would attach an RFID tag to that plant. And the way plants start in MITS is what we call an immature grouping or an immature batch. And these immature grouping and immature batches are groups of cutting or seedlings that have been put in a grow medium to cultivate to the point where they would become a vegging plant. So in MITS, we create these batches, and these batches of immature plants, we could destroy 4 or 5 of them. We could finally come up with 2 or 3 of them are going to become vegging plants, and that's when we would actually put an RFID tag on them. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to create a test batch. And I'm going to pick a plant type of clone. And I'm only going to say there's 1 plant in here for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to pick the strain and the date. Date. And I'm going to create that planting. So as we see here, you can see that that's test number 4. I've done a few test batches in here. So it's test number 4. We've created an immature grouping of plants, and now we realize that there's a plant that has become viable enough to move into veg. So the way we do that is we report the growth change from immature to veg. So when we click on that, first thing we do is look for our grouping or batch of plants. and I'm going to move 1. The next thing I'm going to do is select the RFID tag. What you're seeing here is what I mentioned earlier. This is their actual inventory of non-used RFID tags. They actually show up here. So they actually come to them in a roll form sequentially. So they could simply just pick the next tag from the roll, or they can also scan this into this field. So when they've done that, they've now associated a plant tag to a viable plant. And then the next thing they would do is pick the phase that they're moving that plant into, and what room, and of course the date. And once they do that, the plant is now created, it's associated, and it's now in the system. So now I want to show you quickly packages. That's the other place that we actually associate or attach RFID tags. And so I've gone into packages, which is another functional area in MITS. And I've clicked new package. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a package that would simulate what a lot of licensees are doing right now, and as they roll out, a beginning inventory package. So I'm not going to select any contents. I'm going to create a package, and I'm going to associate an RFID tag on it. And from that point on, the system will track that package. That's simulating their packages that are out there today that we need to get into inventory. So how would I do that? First thing I do is, again, I pick an RFID tag. I could scan in the RFID tag that I'm looking at, that I'm putting on the package. I could scan that in, or I can simply pick the next one in line if I'm tearing it off the roll. And I would pick the actual item that I'm packing and the quantity. So let's put 20 grams here, and then I would pick the date. And you may notice we allow them to pick a date because they may be reporting a little behind on the system. So once I pick those things, create that, my package is created. I've created a package in MITS. I've associated the RFID tag. I've created a plant, a viable plant and veg, and I've associated the RFID tag. So let's go back over here. And I will let Lewis show you a transfer manifest, a digital transfer manifest, in a minute. We will continue to improve, and as more things come online with MITS, we will be working very closely with the industry on that, but the MED will be driving our priorities and authorizing all of that. I'd like to turn it over now to Louis Koski. He's the Chief of Investigations for the MED, as well as Ron Camerzel. He's the Senior Director of Enforcement.
Good morning, I'm Louis Koski. I'm the Chief of Investigations with the Marijuana Enforcement Division. So to really understand how MITS fits into our overarching regulatory framework, it's important to first understand some of the guiding principles that we use when we're determining what type of tools we want to use to ensure that we have a well-regulated marijuana environment. And the first one that I want to talk to you about is transparency. Transparency is really important. It ends up that it cuts both ways. It's important that our licensees have business practices that are open to the regulatory agency. And then it's also important that the division makes its expectations known to the regulated community so everyone knows what they're supposed to do. The second component of that then is that it's systematic. The systematic guiding principle has us using automated technology and methodical processes by which we can evaluate whether or not a licensee is compliant with both the law and our regulations. The third piece then is operable. Operability is getting back to the division's expectations, but those expectations have to be something that are both attainable by licensees and enforceable by regulators. So we're always looking to balance between a robust regulatory environment and business friendly processes that allow them to succeed. And then the fourth one is that all of our processes have to be defensible. Everything that we do has to be defensible to our stakeholders. And the approach that we take to that is that we always ground ourselves in either the Constitution, our statutes, or the regulations. So with those four things in mind, and always a focus on public safety, we selected tools that we could use to be able to better regulate the industry. And so we look at things like tracking licensees' activities. We look at books and records, we look at visitor logs, we look at inventory amounts. Those are the types of things that make the industry business transparent to us, and then also when we go in, they know what our expectations are. Also, we look for tools that help us automate the process. We look for things that enhance enforcement efforts. So the idea here is that when we look at designing a regulatory framework, we're able to enhance our enforcement efforts by doing things that are very specific to the tools we're using. Second is we're looking to identify a high-risk behavior. Central theme in all of what we do from a regulatory standpoint is identifying risk. The higher the risk, the more likely then we're going to be dedicating resources right to that risky behavior. By taking all these things into account, what it really allows us to do is it allows us to efficiently regulate the industry with one of our ultimate goals, which is to ensure that it's a well-regulated industry in aggregate. And at the end of the day, all of our tools really need to demonstrate to the regulator from the regulated community either compliance or non-compliance. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand the podium over to Ron Camersell, the Senior Director of Enforcement for the Department of Revenue, who's going to discuss with you how the MITS system then falls into both our guiding principles and the types of tools that we like to use to ensure compliance. Ron?
Thank you, Louis. So I want to talk about what the MITS system does for us from a state regulator perspective. First of all, there's four overarching factors that MITS has to offer to the state regulator. Number one, monitoring. Number two, efficiency. Number three, data. Number four, accountability. From the state's perspective, the MITS system allows state users to view all license activities captured in the system. That's something that's not currently available to us, and it will further refine and improve and enhance the compliance processes that we currently have in place. The MITS system will also create audit trails and tools for assessing risks and channeling resources more efficiently. For example, system notifications and reporting will be available to us, again, things that we don't currently have available to us, but the MITS system will provide. The system will also create a statewide database of analytical information to establish trends and benchmarks for marijuana production. Again, this is not something that's available today, but the MITS system will afford us the ability to know what amount of marijuana is being produced in the state, how many plants there are in the state. It'll give us key analytics and things that we can use to target our resources more efficiently. The system will also allow criminal investigators to streamline field enforcement and compliance activities associated with licensees. And we're going to get into that a little bit more here in just a few minutes when Louis demonstrates the benefits of RFID technology. And also, the system will provide aggregate data regarding cultivation, production, transportation, and sales of marijuana within the regulated model. And probably most importantly, this system will track transfers of product, whether it be finished marijuana, whether it be infused products. It will track them throughout the state of Colorado. We will be able to know at any given point in time where licensed, regulated marijuana products are being moved within the state. The next thing I want to talk about a little bit, and again from the regulator's perspective, is the true advantages of RFID technology. First of all, the read distances that can be achieved with RFID technology will allow us to identify plants and their tags from a distance, and that's really important when it comes to going in to conduct a compliance inspection in a cultivation facility where they have hundreds of plants. They have very little room for us to move around in there. Today we have to physically inspect and try to identify a plant. With the RFID technology, we'll be able to scan that room. We'll be able to identify plants in the room as well as search for individual plants. The speed of the technology and reading it, instead of going up with a barcode scanner and scanning a barcode and waiting for that, we'll have that information at our fingertips using an RFID reader gun that can do the same amount of work in a matter of seconds for us. RFID also has a unique ability to isolate and singulate a single ID. So in a room of thousands of plants, if we're looking for a specific plant, we can use that technology in the RFID gun reader and the RFID tag to identify that specific plant in an efficient manner. RFID also improves and simplifies the reporting and compliance. It's going to make our compliance check processes much more efficient. We'll be able to prepare for those compliance checks while we're still in the office, obtain information from the system, and then go out and confirm that information by using RFID and also inspection procedures. RFID saves the user time, resulting in reduced labor costs. This is an important flexibility that's really built into the system. This can benefit the industry as well as the MED. If the industry so chooses to take advantage of some of the RFID technologies and the benefits to it, they can also improve their processes and reduce their labor costs. An example of that would be installing a door reader between a vegetative room and a flowering room. If they want to invest the capital to do that, they can physically move the plants, and it will automatically update the system for them instead of having them go with an RFID reader or using a barcode scanner to manually enter that information into the system. And that's just one example of how, if the industry chooses to take advantage of that technology, it can save them labor costs. And finally, it creates a strong chain of custody and traceability for marijuana products throughout the state of Colorado. Moving it from one room to another, moving it from one facility to another, we know where the marijuana is going to be throughout the state at any given point in time. So right now I'm going to turn it back over to Lewis, who will be demonstrating some of the benefits of RFID technology that we've discussed.
So what I have here is an RFID reader. And what this does is this is able to, as Ron mentioned earlier, send out a radio frequency to the RFID tags. That sends information back to the reader to let us know that that tag is within somewhere between 13 to 16 feet from where I'm standing right now. So as an investigator, what I can do is I can look into the system before I ever leave the office, pull out the inventory that's supposed to be in this room. And so I went into the system, and I know that there's 11 plants that are in this room right now that this reader is supposed to pick up on. And so then what I can do then is I'll show you here real quick. This is the exact same screen that I'm looking at. So I go into the system and I pick up on the inventory that says that there's 11 plants. And so then when I come into the cultivation, I'm getting ready to take the inventory. What I do is I get the gun set up, and then I simply pull the trigger. As I pull the trigger, what happens is those lines where you see the number that ends in 6, 9, 8, 5, this reader is picking up on those RFID tags. So if you could imagine this whole room filled with a lot more than 11 plants, as I walk down aisles of plants, it would pick up all of those RFID tags. So if I am done reading and say I have only 8 tags, but the system says there are 11, well, I can simply do a new reading on the reader, and it will not necessarily pick up on tags I've already picked up on, but it will start to find other tags that I didn't see earlier, and I would continue that process until I had all 11 plants. So one of the features of this system then is then I can also go and find just one plant. And what we're having investigators do is they're going to randomly select plants, and when they randomly select the plants, this reader then can beacon to or take you kind of through a hot or cold process, will tell you whether or not you're getting close enough to the tag. So what I did is I selected the tag that ends in 8. And what I do then is I hit search, and as you can see on there, it says search is highlighted between tags, search, and about. It's highlighted and basically says that this RFID reader is going to start to search for that tag. And as I pull the trigger, what happens is I can get an audio representation, which you just heard, and I also get a visual representation that says that I'm at least pointed in the right direction. So what I do as an investigator is I start walking towards where that tells me to go, and as it gets closer to the tag, the bar gets higher, and so does the pitch on the tone. And that's what helps me actually be able to go and find tags. So if a farmer had 500 plants in here, and they're supposed to have 550, and they threw some extra tags around, by randomly selecting, I might be able to find one of those 50 that's really not attached to a plant. So we're able to confirm then on a plant-by-plant basis that an RFID tag is on a plant. Okay? So the next thing I want to show you is what it looks like in the system. You know, Jeff gave us a really good view inside of the system as it faces our licensees. What I'd like to do is I'd like to show it to you from how it looks from the regulator point of view. And so give me a second to log in. So as the system comes online, everything that happens in the system from a licensee standpoint is captured in the central computer, and the division then is able to view all of that information on an industry basis. And the way the system also works, we talked earlier about automated processes and enhancing enforcement efforts. What happens is the system is capable of providing us with notifications. So again, back to Jeff's presentation where he was acting as an industry participant, and he created a package. Once that package is created, and they're getting ready to transfer that to another licensed premise, he creates what's called a travel manifest. And the travel manifest then follows that package to the destination licensee where it gets entered into their inventory system. What's unique about our system and what really helps enhance our enforcement efforts is if that package were not to make it to that destination licensee, then what happens is we get notified along with the licensees. So let's say, for example, Jeff's test batch 4 didn't make it all the way to its final destination, and we get the notification. Well, I could go over here and simply select that travel manifest, and after selecting that manifest, I can view it. So as a regulator and an investigator, what I can do is I can, from my desktop, from my iPhone or my iPad or whatever, I'd be able to actually pull up this information that you're looking at now, and I'd be able to be able to learn important information that was relevant to that transport that didn't make it to its final destination. So as you can see here, it tells me the name of the originating entity. It also tells me where it's supposed to go and the route that the person who was transporting the marijuana was supposed to take, and an approximate arrival time. So we found that this information is very important. We think it's going to be something that really enhances our enforcement efforts and makes us much more effective out in the field. And as a side note, in a lot of our stakeholder meetings and the training that we've given to the industry, we found that we've received widespread support for travel manifests being generated right out of the system. So next what I'm going to do is have Ron come back up and talk to you a little bit about our closing. Thanks.
Thank you, Louis. So as you can see, the MID system is pretty amazing. And it's going to do a lot of things for us that we don't currently have available to us. This is really critically important tool in building a robust regulatory model. But it's important to know it's not the only tool. There are other requirements and activities that will complement and enhance the effectiveness of our regulation by using the MIT system. Things such as video surveillance of all of our licensed operations, unannounced on-site compliance inspections, underage and other enforcement compliance operations, mandatory testing, and mandated point-of-sale and tax transaction records maintenance. If you combine all these things together, these tools will help us minimize diversion, provide consumer safety, and ensure the proper collection of state tax revenues. We really appreciate you being here today, and I want to thank you for attending our presentation.